1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it's the Hake Report, the Hake Report, la la la. Oh, it's the Hake Report, the Hake Report, la la la.
Hey guys.
Oh, it's the Hake Report, the Hake Report, la la la. Oh, it's the Hake Report, the Hake Report, la la la.
So, I am James Hake. This is the Hake Report. It is 9 a.m. Wednesday, August 28th, 2019. From the fourth hour of Jesse Lee Peterson's streams, thank you, Jesse. Streaming on YouTube, D Live, Periscope, and Mixer.com/JLP Talk. And you can find all that stuff. And it's also streaming on audio via JLPTalk.com. And then click on listen, and then you can get the audio stream. It usually works. And you can get my podcast by going to thehakereport.com/podcast. So, I wanted to talk about the media, because the media is so fake. I have more quotes about the media and the role of so-called journalism, and this is kind of it kind of shows why these people are the way that they are, because they're just brainwashed commies. And commie is a word that's banned from Twitch. So Twitch doesn't just suspend Hassan Piker for 7 days for saying nasty things. It also suspends people for telling the truth, the ugly truth, that the media are commies. So I have more quotes from filthy Bernie Sanders. And then you guys can call in 888-775-3773. And you can talk about anything. It doesn't have to be about this, but I just wanted to share this with you because I covered Bernie Sanders being so phony about defending the free press and stupid stuff. But I wanted to just read some more quotes from his op-ed. He wrote an op-ed in the Far Left Columbia Journalism Review. And I didn't read these quotes yesterday, so I want to read them to you today. He says, this is Bernie Sanders writing, supposedly Bernie Sanders writing. Real journalism, in the words of Joseph Pulitzer, he probably pronounces it Pulitzer, who knows, will, quote, fight for progress and reform. Wow, that's journalism, huh? Fighting for progress and reform sounds like activism. Never tolerate injustice or corruption. That's laughable. Oh, we forgot to change my background. You see the JLP show background behind me, and it's supposed to be the Hake Report background, which is a nice, hilly, beautiful part of the valley. Not the San Fernando Valley, but the San Gabriel Valley. Hills. Mountains. So, anyways, I'm reading about what Bernie Sanders is saying and quoting from just Joseph Pulitzer. Pulitzer said, that they will never tolerate injustice or corruption. That's dumb because the media promotes injustice and corruption in the name of social justice. And they cover for Barack Obama and all that stuff. All those corrupt people, right? Very corrupt. But they tolerated that corruption because he was on their side of social justice, which is not justice. And always fight demagogues. You mean like Joe Biden, the demagogue? Or Harry Reid, the demagogue, Harry Reid was a Democrat, very famous Democrat from Nevada. He's retired. He had a black eye very recently before he retired. I don't know what from. Maybe he fell on his jogging treadmill. So, that guy falsely called the Tea Parties domestic terrorists. Crazy, huh? And the media were constantly calling the Tea Partiers racist just because they were mostly white. So that just tells you the media are corrupt. They are unjust. But anyways, they'll always fight demagogues. Yeah, right. And then Pulitzer said that, this is Bernie promoting what Pulitzer said. And I don't know what type of person Pulitzer it was, but he sounds like not a good person. Pulitzer said that journalism must oppose privileged classes and public plunderers and never lack sympathy with the poor. Sympathy for the poor. They have sympathy is not a good thing to have for the so-called poor, because they promote people as being poor when they're not actually that poor. They're actually spoiled. But they feel sorry for the poor. That's what they do. And always remain devoted to the public welfare and never be satisfied with merely printing news. So journalism isn't about dispassionate reporting of the news. It's about leftist activism, communism, socialism, all that stuff. Pulitzer says journalism must always be drastically independent, never be afraid to attack wrong, whether by predatory plutocracy or predatory poverty. What does drastically independent mean? Does the mainstream media seem at all independent to you? Let alone drastically independent? No, they're leftist, brainwashed NPCs, non-player characters. They're not independent thinkers whatsoever. But this is Bernie promoting the mainstream media who support Black Lives Matter, because he did too. Bernie says, when we have real journalism, we have seen crimes like Watergate, exposed and confronted, leading to anti-corruption reforms. When we have lacked real journalism, we've seen crimes like mortgage fraud go unnoticed and unpunished, leading to a devastating financial crisis that destroyed millions of Americans' lives. Real journalism requires significant resources. So he's thinking that we should have government-funded so-called journalism, I guess. I noticed that he didn't mention any of the more recent scandals, Obama's scandals, because the media refused to look into them. They covered for him. They didn't look into his birth certificate even, or his background, his college transcripts, or the reality that he was pro same-sex marriage well before he was ever elected, when everybody was pretending, oh, Obama's not for same-sex marriage, he's for traditional marriage. Jesse Lee Peterson was one of the only people who in 2008, whenever it was happening, 07, 08, Jesse knew that he was pro same-sex marriage. How did Jesse know, but all the so-called journalists did not know this? And of course he came out for it, and Jesse was proven right. They refuse to look into anything, at least when it comes to liberals. They just take the liberals' word for it, and the victims, by the way. They take the victims' word for it. These illegals who are coming across the border, they just take their word for their little sob stories that they tell. Oh, I was beaten by whatever. Oh, I'm running from gangs. Oh, I'm an economic refugee. Whatever they call themselves, the media takes their word for it. They take the word of blacks, women, gays. You saw how Juicy Smollett happened. The media took his word for it, and then and so did the Democrats, by the way. And they acted like, oh, racism in Chicago, of all places. But meanwhile, they scrutinize and nitpick Trump. Every little piddly thing that he says that may be slightly inaccurate, they falsely call him a liar. Crazy. So, speaking of Trump, Bernie says, we also know that Donald Trump is making things far worse for so-called journalism. He is a pathological liar who has spent his presidency trying to demonize journalists when they dare to debunk his lies. But Trump hasn't lied about anything. Bernie's a liar. So I just wanted to share that with you, because Bernie he's presented as though he's a very honest person. And I've seen rhinos and mainstream so-called conservatives even pretend to go along with this notion that Bernie is such an honest person. And he's an old timer, and he's just sticks to what he believes in. He believes in lies. He's fake. And he's promoting Pulitzer. I guess the Pulitzer Prize is dumb. And then there's dumb people like talking about whataboutism. as if I didn't just prove that the media are disgusting, filthy hypocrites and liars. So, speaking of beta males, Beto O'Rourke attacked the free press. I reported on this very briefly earlier this morning on the Hake news sections of the Jesse Peterson Show. So Drudge reports Beto ejects a reporter from an event after campaigning on the free press. So these liberals that pay lip service to the free press, it's just talk. They don't really care about it. Breitbart reports, and it happened to be a reporter calling him out on a lie that he repeated. And I'll explain later. Breitbart reports Tuesday afternoon at an HBCU, historical black college or university. Breitbart reporter Joel Pollack, not Joel Pollack. I'm trained to read Joel as Joel now. I'm traumatized by these black Joels. Joel Pollack was standing in a room with about 200 students and college staff members. Other news outlets had set up cameras in the back of the room where Beto O'Rourke, former congressman from Texas, tried to run against Ted Cruz and topple Ted Cruz because Texas is turning purple, bluish. It's kind of turning blue, but hopefully Alan West beats that back. Alan West is running for state chair of the Republican Party. Jesse just interviewed him for Manhood Month, Men's History Month. So a staff member with a Beto O'Rourke t-shirt, walks up to Joel Pollack and looked at his press credential and saw, oh, Joel Pollack, Breitbart News. Oh, okay. And he laughed, walked away. A campus police officer, walks up to him just minutes later before the event starts, because the event is late in starting, and told him he had to leave. Get your stuff, come back, see me, you have to leave. And so another staff member goes over to Joel Pollack and told him that he was ejected because he had been, quote unquote, disruptive at past events. I thought journalists were supposed to be disruptive based on what Pulitzer and Bernie Sanders promoted. And I'll read you a tweet later from last October of Beto kissing up to the same ideas. Joel Pollack has covered 2 Beto O'Rourke events, and he documented them in other Breitbart articles. And by the way, Joel Pollack has interviewed Jesse on various times, even at Politicon recently. He was at Politicon event, and Jesse was speaking there, talking with other blacks. Man, people are not very independent-minded across the board, really. So the first time that Joel Pollack covered a Bernie event, and then I will get to your calls. I appreciate you guys holding on. The first time Joel Pollack covered a Bernie event was at a protest outside a shelter for migrant teens in Homestead, Florida. I don't know why a place called Homestead, Florida is hosting so-called migrant teens, illegal aliens, wannabe refugees, whatever. And that was in June. The second time Joel Pollack interviewed Beto, or was at a Beto event, was at the College of Charleston Bully Pulpit lecture in Charleston, South Carolina. And that was just on Monday evening. So, according to Joel Pollack, at no point was there any disruption whatsoever. He asked one question at the Monday event. He asked whether misquoting Trump's comments on the riots in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017 was consistent with what O'Rourke's pledge was. O'Rourke pledged to heal and not inflame divisions in this country. And this reference to misquoting Trump's comments on the 2017 Charlottesville riot was a reference to what's become known as the quote-unquote very fine people hoax. And this is something that even Scott Adams, who's more like, tends to not be that involved, but he just likes persuasion and kind of being independent-minded, kind of not necessarily siding with the conservatives or with Trump, but he's kind of gone pro-Trump because these people are so insane. So very fine people hoax, made popular by him and others, by Scott Adams and others who's been on this Jesse show. Trump said that there were good people on both sides of this Charlottesville riot that took place in 2017, August of 2017. It wasn't going to be a riot. It didn't have to be a riot, but the higher ups, the Democrats who were in charge of the Charlottesville, Virginia area, told the cops basically, stand by, stand off, let the Antifa intermix with the alt-right people. The alt-right people had the permits to do this Unite the Right rally. And they were protesting the taking down of General Robert E. Lee's statue at Lee Park in Charlottesville, Virginia. And then they showed up, but of course other people showed up too. Black Lives Matter types showed up. There's a black contingent in Charlottesville, and they're, complainers, typical. And then of course Antifa showed up. Antifa showed up and trying to start fights, and they maced people that weren't doing anything, such as, Richard Spencer, who is not a fighter. He's an activist, right? He tries to have a polished image. He didn't show up to fight. He showed up to speak. And they maced other people. So they were attacking the alt-right, and the alt-right, some of them did show up to fight. They showed up to fight back. And so there were people that, there was fighting on both sides, really. But Antifa was the main aggressors. By far the main aggressors, according to independent reporters, such as, I can get you the name. There was one guy that we used for the reporting because the media wasn't really being honest about it. But other independent reporters noticed and noted that the attackers were the leftists, Antifa. And so that was a fact. But the media got their excuse to blame the right by one guy freaking out and driving into a crowd, one white guy, a so-called white nationalist type. And this guy had already had troubles at home. He had issues. He had anger problems. He had attacked his mother. His mother was a single mother. He had like a mental thing going on. I think he was partly autistic or something. And on top of that, Antifa was attacking his car. He might have been driving a little fast, and maybe that's why they swung at his car, but there's video of his car being hit with Antifa flagpoles by Antifa members before he flipped out and drove into that crowd. And some say that he freaked out and did it in kind of self-defense type of thing. He was scared, whatever. And when he drove into that crowd, more people Antifa was ready. They came in with their bats and sticks, broke his windows, got on his car, and then so he backed up almost running over, but he didn't run over people in that backing up. But he backed up and injured some more Antifa people who had swarmed his car and got out of there and then was stopped by the cops. Long story short, he pleaded guilty to hate crimes. I don't think he should have pleaded guilty to that because all they could find was his past social media posts about hating Antifa and hating the globalists and stuff like that. And maybe he was a Jew blamer too. I don't know. But the point is, he drove into that crowd. He was either angry or scared or both. And a girl died. A woman, white liberal woman, died. Heather Heyer or something like that. And so media got their excuse to blame all of the violence all of a sudden only on the alt-right, not on the left, not on Antifa. But Antifa was the main aggressors in the whole thing. But that's why you have to be perfect especially if you're on the right, especially if you're trying to stand for what's right. You have to be perfect. You have to be totally blameless because you're going to be held to a higher standard, and rightly so. But anyways, Trump said the truth. There were very fine people on both sides, meaning people were well-behaved on both sides, and there were some violence on many sides, and that's just fact. So the media constantly repeat this lie that Trump's called Nazis very fine people. And there were nobody who identified as a Nazi over there, right? Anyways, so Beto repeated this, and so the Breitbart reporter calls him out and says, hey, you're not working to heal and not inflame divisions in America by repeating this lie, dividing people with lies, right? So that's disruptive. According to Beto's people, that's disruptive. Beto's a loser anyways. He's not going to win the nomination. But it's just an interesting side note to show you how hypocritical and fake and pathetic these people are. They pay lip service to the Constitution and the free press. The free press, as I said yesterday, is the people who are getting suspended and censored and shut down on social media and the mainstream media. People like I pointed out, Jesse Lee Peterson being falsely accused of hate speech. The left actually believes in hate speech. If you're a journalist, you don't believe in hate speech, but these are fake journalists. So, speaking of that, Tucker was attacked for telling the truth. Tucker was attacked for telling the truth that white supremacy is not a real issue. Take away my banner under there. I just want to show the headline from media. So this came out in early August. Show the thing. This came out in early August, right? After the El Paso shooting. El Paso shooting where the eco-fascists shot up the Mexicans in the El Paso Walmart. Tucker says white supremacy is a hoax. It's actually not a real problem in America. Because it's not. All these whites that are getting mad, they're not white supremacists. They are white angry people. And some of them are not even, some of them, who knows? They're no worse than the Democrats or the rhinos or the conservatives. They're just have a different political opinion from you. So the media are not defending Tucker. Tucker is standing strong against this controversy. It's been months that they've been trying to take him down because he speaks more independently from all of the rest of them. So much for fiercely independent, right? Tucker has lost advertisers, according to the New York Times, following his recent comments dismissing white supremacy as not a real problem in America and saying the concern about it is a hoax. And so his ratings have not really gone down, by the way. They've stayed pretty even. July, August, still number 2 spot on cable TV. Mediaite reports following the El Paso shooting and growing concern about domestic terrorism in the United States, Fox News host Tucker Carlson mocked the media concern and called white supremacy a hoax being used to divide the country, which is true. It reminds me of the Black Lives Matter scare when Trayvon Martin was killed, presumably in self-defense, presumed innocent, right? They don't like to presume people innocent when they kill a black guy. They called it, oh, how could this happen in America? We all need to do some soul searching. That's what Obama said. And the media drummed it up as though it was a great injustice that he wasn't charged until he finally was charged for murder. George Zimmerman charged for murder in killing Trayvon Martin. And then the same thing happened in Ferguson. Officer Darren Wilson, former officer now, he was forced to resign for doing his job, killed Michael Brown in self-defense. But they said, no, it was hands up, don't shoot. A lie. The media promoted it as a lie, and they promoted this police brutality thing to the point where they're promoting that guy, that football player, Colin Kaepernick, the former football player, right? as promoting the truth about police brutality, which is a total lie. And that's being used to divide the country. Same thing with this white supremacy thing, so-called. Tucker points out that Trump, quote, never endorsed white supremacy or came close to endorsing white supremacy. That's just a lie, but he He condemned it anyway. Their response, he didn't really mean it. And Tucker's right about that. He showed clips of Don Lemon, who is the dumbest man on television, according to Trump. Didn't used to be, but he got Trump derangement syndrome and went just dumb. So he said that Trump's words ring hollow when he coddles white supremacists, meaning Trump tells the truth, because a lot of these people who are accused of being white supremacists, they happen to be telling the truth and hanging, they happen to say things that are true. But because they can smear them as white supremacists, they don't have to address the truth of what they're telling. And CNN's Kirsten Powers, another gem of a person, says it's the arsonist coming, referring to Trump as an arsonist, right? And saying they want to help put out the fire. Kirsten Powers, nasty person. Man-hater, by the way. Carlson went on to say the whole thing is a lie, and he said, quote, if you want to assemble a list, and then I will get to your calls, appreciate it. If you want to assemble a list, a hierarchy of concerns of problems this country faces, where would white supremacy be on the list? Right up there with Russia, probably. It's actually not a real problem in America, he says. The combined membership of every white supremacist organization in this country would be able to fit inside a college football stadium. I mean, seriously. And that Unite the Right rally was an example of that. This is a country where the average person is getting poorer, where the suicide rate is spiking. White supremacy, that's the problem. That is a hoax. Just like the Russia hoax. It's a conspiracy theory used to divide the country and keep a hold on power. That's exactly what's going on. That's what Tucker Carlson said. And he's making a good point that the wages and the value of money and the value of people's work is being totally devalued because we keep on trucking in all these illegals, all these immigrants who, quote unquote, do the work that others won't, that Americans won't. Of course they won't, because they're getting welfare, they're getting paid not to work. But if we got rid of that, put the blacks and everybody else who's not working to work back to work, which they can be working, and close the borders, stopped encouraging women working and not having babies and going to college and getting your career first and being able to afford a house first when you're like 30 or 40 or 50, and then you regret not having kids, becoming a depressed old feminist. Yeah, those are serious issues facing the country. And then suicide rate is spiking, especially among white men, but they don't care about the white men. So dozens of advertisers have distanced themselves, including Pacific Life, Farmers Insurance, SodaStream, the meditation app Calm, SoFi, and they're all listening to Media Matters, which is a trash organization that is against America. They hate America. They hate white people, Christians, and men. They're a really trashy, filthy organization. So that's just a summary of the media. And by the way, Joe Biden is the scum of the earth. I'm going to get to him in a second. But no, I don't have anything for you. He's running on a lie just like Obama did, just like Black Lives Matter did, just like the media did. And so, by the way, are people like Joe Walsh, who is supposed to be conservative, supposed to be a Tea Party guy. Speaking of the children of the lie that Jesse talks about, Democrats, rhinos, media, never Trumpers, they are all pretty much the same. All right, Chris, out of New Hampshire, first-time caller. How are you doing, Chris?
Good. What's going on, man? Yeah, I actually just went to a Joe Biden rally last Saturday at Keene, New Hampshire, and literally, well, first off, he said on the press release or whatever that he thought he was in Vermont, but these guys hate freedom of speech.
Yeah.
I went in undercover. I had a Biden sticker on and a poster and everything, and I had guys come up to me and say, if there's a heckler, chant "Go Joe." If there's a protester, body check them, block them. Yeah, it was there's no room for freedom of speech, man. It was incredible. I went to a Trump rally.
You sound like Dylon.
We encourage it. we encourage.
You encourage the protesters to be free.
We encourage them. Yeah, we want civil dialogue.
Yeah.
In hopes to find common ground. You know what I mean?
That is so true. Yeah, you go to a right-wing protest, like a Tea Party protest, or a free speech protest, or whatever it is. Generally, you'll find people wanting to engage and debate and stuff. But you go to a typical leftist Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter, or leftist rally, they get all hostile on you. And they're just ridiculous.
But to be honest with you, Trump's got it. There was only 400 Biden supporters there. It was, and I showed up late, and I got to meet Biden.
Wow!
I showed up 3 hours early to a Trump rally. I can't even get in the arena.
That's true. People get sold out. Biden is unexciting.
But
tired.
The media wants people to think that no one loves Trump. But there's tons of Trump supporters. Yeah.
Definitely. He's electrifying because that's what the truth does. It brings you energy, especially the loving way that he delivers it. And they pretend to act like he's so divisive and hateful. He pushes love and unity. And yes, he does criticize people heartily, with a great energy and force, but just like Jesse does. And Jesse's accused of the same things that Trump is accused of.
Jesse's the man.
Yeah. Accused of hating black people, hating white people, all kinds of madness. They make up stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, Biden said at the rally that Trump didn't condemn white supremacy for the Charlottesville rally.
Yeah.
That's all Trump does is condemn white supremacy.
He actually did, which he didn't even need to, but he did. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, but at least good thing that Trump did. He condemned the alt left. He said, "What about the alt left? You guys never talk about the alt left."
Yeah.
And so that's true.
Yeah, that is true. Well, hey, it was nice talking to you guys.
Right on. Did you tell anything smart to Joe Biden when you met him?
Oh yeah. You can look it up. It's on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, YouTube, whatever.
Oh, really?
I saw Joe Biden, and then I said I went in undercover, and then I acted like I was taking a picture with him, but it was a video, and I said, "Make America Great Again," and then he says, "No way, it's already great." So I said, "You're right. Keep America great. Keep America great." and then he says, "No, keep it honest," which I kind of find that hypocritical. But so. Yeah, and then I left, but then I had to leave because some soy boy, beta male, told me to leave. So
wow, that's funny, man. How old are you, Chris?
I'm 21.
Nice. I appreciate that. That is cool. Yeah. I'm gonna look that up.
All right, brother.
All right, take care.
All right, bye.
Speaking of Men's History Month, that is nice. And that's funny to hear him say, "Keep America honest," because he was VP for the liar-in-chief, Barack Obama. And Obama, Jesse always points out the lie that Obama pretended not to know that his pastor of 20 years, who was like an uncle to him, that he didn't know that his pastors hated America and white people and stuff like that. His pastor who said, "It's not God bless America, it's God damn America. And America's chickens are coming home to roost," with 9/11, I think is when he said that. And Obama sat under him for 20 years and said he was like an uncle to him. He married him and Michelle. And so that was one lie. Another lie was that he was not for same-sex marriage. He pretended that he was for traditional marriage. Oh, and then that he evolved in 2012, or whenever that was. He evolved. Ridiculous. And then Obama lied about blacks being constantly targeted by police. We've all been victims of it. And he just beat around the bush and and was very very thoughtful. And so the media loved him. Meaning intellectual, a liar. A fake. And Joe Biden is his man. But he didn't endorse Joe Biden. In fact, the rumors are that he told Joe Biden not to run. Drudge reports Biden says that racism in the USA is institutional and a white man's problem visited on people of color. A white man's problem visited on people of color. Like the people of color have to deal with the white man's racism, so-called. AP reports Biden implied Trump's words, quote, appeal to the worst damn instincts of human nature. You mean like when Obama basically encouraged black riots and rewarded them with inviting Black Lives Matter to the White House? That's the worst instincts of human nature. And trolling and lying and trying to make people mad. He totally mocked and rejected any criticism from the Tea Party. He said, you would think these people would be thanking me. He wasn't uniting people. But the media loved him, so he kissed up. And so Biden's trying to ride that black wave. Biden said, white folks are the reason that we have institutional racism. There has always been racism in America. White supremacists have always existed. They still exist. It's like he's trying to convince himself. Because, no, they haven't. Nobody actually thinks that... Anyways, they don't actually think that they're superior. Sometimes they, all, like what Jesse said, all angry people are supremacists because they feel superior. He feels that he's superior to all the white people that he's criticizing. Fake. He's running on a lie, just like Obama's Black Lives Matter was built on lies. Media lies caused riots and cop killings. And that was what kind of exposed just how dishonest the media was to me. Because they know how blacks are. They've seen the riots before, how riot-prone and violence-prone and cop-hating that they are. But no, they wanted to act like they're journalists. They stirred the pot to undermine the system. And it's just like what they're doing with the system of the immigration system. They're stirring the pot and getting people to come up here, helping them, running PR for them. You saw those migrant caravans. They didn't interview the men so much. They interviewed the single mothers, but mostly it was men coming up. 80% men is one report that I heard of migrant caravans coming up from Central and South America. And they were doing these sob stories, just taking the women's word for it. And these are not families coming up, by the way. They call them family units, but they're usually a mother and children, or a so-called father and children, not a family, not married couples with the children, as if we should accept them anyways. We shouldn't accept them either. But they're overrunning the border to where ICE has to contract out in order to get housing for these people because we're not allowed to send them back right away. And they're exploiting loopholes. This is the media promoting this too, encouraging corrupt people, especially the corrupt people that are coming up here, and the corrupt lawyers who are helping them, the corrupt ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, anti-American, that is fighting to keep the illegals here and keep the homeless here and not enforce the law. Just all kinds of madness, promoting victimhood, encouraging corruption. The media and Democrats and rhinos and never-Trumpers, like Joe Walsh, by the way, are so dishonest. And Joe Walsh, I used to have like a positive image of him because he ran as like a Tea Party guy. You know who else was a Tea Party guy, though? Paul Ryan. He was supposed to be kind of a Tea Party guy. Tea Party being in 2010, 2011. We got sick of all this the government spending, and Obama spiked it like crazy, even more. He increased the spending like crazy, even more than Bush, and we didn't like Bush spending. So the Tea Party started having these Tea Party protests. Taxed enough already and stuff like that. And Joe Walsh was a part of that. Paul Ryan was a part of that. And those guys have turned out to be rhinos and never Trumpers. So fake. So yeah, that's one reason that you can blame even the conservative white people, not just the liberal white people, for the bringing on further destruction of white people. To answer, it's not an answer to the biblical question, but it's an example of, it illustrates why we have to ask the question of why white people are destroying themselves or helping their enemies destroy them. Joe Walsh was a former representative from Illinois, I believe, and he became a radio host because he was just a one-term congressman. I don't know what happened with him. But he lied and said that Trump didn't build the wall. He has been building the wall. The wall is going up. It's happening. I've heard from callers and from media reports that it's done in certain places. San Diego, where they stormed, famously in last November, the so-called migrants, so-called peaceful migrants, stormed the border, climbed over the fence or ran through and threw rocks at the cops, the Border Patrol agents, and rioted. And we want these people in the country, and we've seen it repeatedly too over the months and weeks. They've been, and it's really been years, decades, that they've been like this. So, Joe Walsh said that we didn't build the wall. Yes, we did. Trump didn't build the wall. Yes, he did. And he said, well, he hasn't completed it. But he's not being reasonable here. This is kind of like an Obama lie where you tell a fact in order to push a lie. He said that we're facing a worse crisis now than ever, which is true. He's talking about the border crisis. He said the border situation and the immigration situation is worse today under Trump than when it happened before Trump took office. And that is a fact. And I'll tell you why it's a fact. Because people are working like crazy to undermine Trump, making it that way. And people like Joe Walsh, to be honest, he pretends that he's for, and maybe he really, in his mind, is for what's right. But he's fake. And so many people are so fake. It's crazy. So that's an example of how Joe Walsh is just like the people that he opposes. And if we're not careful, we end up that way too. Josh out of Chicago, speaking of Illinois, first-time caller. How are you doing, Josh?
I'm doing good, Hake. How you doing?
Doing fine, thank you. Nice to hear from you.
I just started watching your show just a little while ago, and I'm really impressed, man. You've really done well.
Appreciate it. Thank you, man.
I wanted to make a quick comment about Joe Walsh. I live in Gurnee, Illinois, actually, and he was my congressman. And not only that, I knew the guy. I campaigned for him. It was 2010 election, and he was like the first election that we were able to run against the real left-wingers. It was a Tea Party candidate, and we were excited about him. And, I mean, he really talked a real good game at the time.
Right.
But when I met him, though, I knew there was something off about him. There was something really strange about him, and couldn't really put my finger on it. But now it seems like all the truth is starting to come out.
Yeah. Yeah, people, this is why we need to aim for perfection, because we could end up just like him if we don't become perfect ourselves. And it sounds like, I don't know what his deal is, whether he's just mad or whether, which is enough to make you deluded, self-deceived, and deceiving other people too, or if
right.
he has some ulterior motive beyond just the anger, because a lot of people are driven by money, power, all kinds of stuff, and when you have Trump derangement syndrome, which is another word for anger, right? When you have
Correct.
Trump derangement syndrome, you're liable to go off the deep end and undermine your own self-interest. It's in these journalists and this guy, he's a radio host, self-interest, to calm down and be like pro-Trump. but he can't be honest because he's mad, I guess. And so he's undermining. He got fired from his job as a radio host, I reported.
Right.
And he found that out just before going on CNN. For some reason, he's been going on CNN a lot, or at least once or twice. And why would you go on CNN, the enemy of the people, to talk about Trump as though Trump is the enemy? What a coward! What a kiss up!
He's a coward.
Yeah.
He's a coward, and he'll go on. Anyone on CNN will take you if you have any publicity whatsoever, and especially if you're a Republican and you're ripping the president. That's it's like a golden ticket to get on CNN.
Good point.
But one thing that you mentioned I thought was really interesting. You just mentioned that we have to aim for perfection. And if you're going to aim for perfection in the state of Illinois, well, you better have some good sight lines on that gun, because this state is going downhill. I'm actually going to be relocating to Colorado here in a few months for my job. Thank God.
Oh, okay. Congrats.
Thank God I have a company who's going to buy my house from me, because the taxes have gone insane here. I have a decent-sized home, but it's not very big, and my taxes are $16,000 a year.
Wow.
And that's now all after tax, because the new tax law won't let you deduct more than $10,000 of your state tax.
I love that Trump did that. I don't know if you're happy about that, but I am so happy about that.
I'm happy because people are going to flock out of that state, and they're going to lose congressional representation.
Yeah, the federal government. So to explain to you guys listening, the federal government under Trump, he cut basically the federal government was subsidizing the high liberal state taxes. So California, Illinois, New York, and various other places have high state taxes because they like to tax the snot out of you so that they can pay for homeless people to be even more homeless and more on drugs and all kinds of, various things. They pay for silly jobs, environmentalist jobs, and all kinds of madness. Social workers that break up families and cause more mess. They just, swoop in to save you from the problems that they created and make more problems. So they have high taxes. And the federal government used to say, okay, you can deduct what you owe to the federal government. You can deduct some of that amount that you owe by saying, hey, look at how much state taxes I paid. Because the state taxes are supposedly, the excuse for that is that high state taxes mean that there's a lot of state programs, so they don't require the use of federal funds as much. So anyways, So anyways, like Trump said, no, we're not going to subsidize your high taxes anymore. So yes, we are cutting taxes, but you're going to have to pay the full amount, all of you citizens of these liberal states. And it's very punishing to the liberals, but it's punishing because of the corruption. They're no longer giving welfare, basically. It's welfare you can call it welfare. We shouldn't even be having the taxes on the level that we are, but we currently need taxes in order to, it's out of control, all the stuff that they have going on. Can't just fire all the employees as much as I would like to, the government employees.
But James, let me tell you, it is so sad. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and at the time it was a good Polish and Italian neighborhood that I grew up in, and it was never like it is now. We've got this Pritzker guy as governor. We've got the black lesbian that's our mayor of Chicago, and
Lori Lightfoot.
They're just tearing the state apart. I mean, just from limb to limb, and it's really depressing. I don't know what the solution is going to be. I don't know if there ever will be. I think we're just going to the whole state's going to be Detroit, and I don't see much of a future for this state at all.
Yeah, man. I mean, don't be down about it. It's just the way the ball bounces. When there's so much corruption allowed in the country, then that's what you're going to get. So that's why I said to aim for perfection. I meant on a personal level. To be personally perfect.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Real quick story, and I'll let you get on to your callers. But being that I grew up in Chicago, I had a lot of friends that were in the police department, a lot of friends that worked in construction.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, one example of the corruption that goes on there. They're taking just normal people off the street and on paper paying them union wage to work these construction sites, which there's way too many of, $35, $40 an hour. And there's a under-the-table agreement with the foremen that are on these contracts they're getting kicked back about $20 an hour of that money to these foremen. And so they're robbing the state of their funds by having on paper all these people making 35, 40, and sometimes even more than that, to hold signs up of go slow or whatever. And they wonder why they're broke in this state. This is such a racket. It's one big mob.
Yeah, down here in LA, they talk about the pensions that these guys get. After they stop working, they get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases, and it's just ridiculous. It's so corrupt. It's wrong.
And they go home to their tents.
Yeah, they're doing quite well. I appreciate it, Josh.
Great job, James. I really appreciate you, man. Keep it going.
All right. Happy Men's History Month, by the way. It's the last week.
Happy Men's History Month to you, too. Hey, what's in September, by the way? Do you know?
I do not know. People are trying to... Somebody called it Straight Pride Month. Somebody's, really pushing for that. But I don't know. Good luck controlling Jesse.
All right. Have a great Wednesday, buddy.
All right. Take care. So let me read some super chats, or at least let me shout out to the D Live people. Jimmy DM, I am lucky. Noah's Arkansas. Thank you guys as always. D March, deplorable girl. Tracy from New Jersey. Tracy from NJ. Flo Shinsky, Dark Side of the Bear. Shaggy Boy, Bayonet. Sion Desta, and all you guys. Appreciate your constant support. And let me just double check the Streamlabs, just to make sure that we don't miss stuff. If not, then we'll read it, make sure that Joel reads it tomorrow, which he will. So I wanted to just touch briefly on these transgender stuff, because Jesse did write an article, excellent article, Straight Pride versus Leftist Haters, telling them about what went down up in Modesto, California. And the leftist haters were LGBTQIAR blah, 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 blah types. And Antifa. Maybe the A is for Antifa. LGBTQIA. A is not asexual, it's Antifa. Because there were some Antifa people with the fist rainbow around it, and then the communist fist, and they were chanting antifascista. They were just not allowed to wear the masks like Antifa is allowed to wear. Well, they have the mainstream support. Trans model is the new face of Chanel. And I do not care about Chanel, right? Chanel is I think it's like a lipstick brand, makeup, but they may have other, bags, right? They have, those purse things. So anyways, this guy has been undercover transgender, leading up to 2017. He actually marched across the runway as a model, pretending to be a girl, and everybody believed it, I guess. Or maybe they didn't care. But he didn't come out as a transgender until 2017. And he thought he even marched down the aisle thing for Chanel before this Chanel Beauty, so-called. And he had also marched for Louis Vuitton, which also makes purses, I think, and Gucci. Gucci being that very far left pro-abortion people. They had a show in Italy, I think it was, where they celebrated the date that that abortion became legal, so-called, in Italy. And they had this "My Body, My Choice" shirt or sweater or something like that. And so they've hired I mean, you keep on seeing news reports about it. It's kind of tiresome, to be honest. But you keep on seeing new transgender models being hired by these people in this field that has become known as a homosexual field, to be honest. So it's really not surprising. But there's also, of course, thanks Obama, right? Idaho must pay for a transgender inmate's surgery. Idaho, of all places, has to, and transgender inmate, meaning a sex offender, he's going to get sex reassignment surgery. According to a liberal judge, these liberals like to hide behind liberal judges and the Supreme Court whenever they rule on something. They say, well, that's the law, that's the Constitution. But then when a conservative does it, they say, this evil person, and they celebrate when Justice Scalia dies. Justice Scalia being a more conservative, pro-Constitution, pro-common sense type of a judge. Thank God that we have Justice Clarence Thomas in there. He's like the rock of common sense. I think so, anyways. Seemingly, he's more solid than anybody else in there in the Supreme Court. So they're going to take it to the Supreme Court. Idaho's governor wants to take it to the Supreme Court because he doesn't feel that the taxpayers should have to pay for criminals to get sex reassignment surgery. Just crazy. Kevin, out of Connecticut. First-time caller, how are you?
I'm doing all right, sir. How are you?
Doing fine, thank you. Nice to hear from you. Real fast, what's your question or comment?
Well, the thing is like I was saying earlier, I've been listening to Jesse Peterson's show for the last going on like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Or so, and I watch a lot of his videos online.
Right on.
And the thing is that I try to call his show.
Yeah.
And get him on the line and talk to him, and
you got to call early and often. So call right at 9.
Every time I called, it's like a busy signal, and I called throughout the show. I called maybe like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
So it's basically I can't get through him. The only person I can get through is to you.
Right on.
So I
appreciate it.
I talk to you, but I have an answer to his weekly biblical question.
Okay, cool. His biblical question is, why do white people help their enemies destroy them? Go for it.
Because they're ignorant like the black man.
Interesting. Explain.
Well, think about it, right? If it goes back, they're ignorant because they don't do their own history work on slavery. If we go all the way back to slavery, there's over 3,000 black men that were actually slave owners. Yeah. Too. And one of the first, if you do your history, one of the first slaves was one of the first slave owners was a black man that owned a tobacco plantation.
Yeah.
And
I've heard that.
I guess a white man took his slave, and then he got his slave back through court.
But you know what, man? I disagree in that it's not just knowledge about that stuff that's going to bring courage back. I think it's a spiritual problem. White people, it's not just ignorance. It's way bigger than that. It's a lack of courage. It's a lack of living up to what you believe in, because whites do tend to be conservative, right? But they don't live it. And even the ones that have the families together and everything, the kids are still growing up weak and alienated and pathetic and unable to fight back, even if they do know better, So there's a weakness going on where we're even fooled by the intellectual whites like Joe Walsh, for example. Why did we elect Joe Walsh? Or why did we have Romney or McCain or George W. Bush or George Bush the daddy?
Because they were, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah,
they
go for
weren't
it.
True Republican. They're rhinos.
Yeah, we fell for it. It's a shame.
They're rhinos.
Yeah.
That's the thing about it. Now, I understand that you don't agree with what I just said.
I mean, I agree with it. I agree with it somewhat, but it's not. There's a spiritual weakness.
Spiritual. What you're saying, it's a spiritual battle, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
So then, if it's a spiritual battle, then why are we tend to fight flesh and blood instead of the spirit realm?
That's a good question, Kevin. I'll talk about that tomorrow. Take care, man.
All right.
All right, bye.
How about we get Jesse into this conversation?
Yeah, you can definitely call Jesse about it. Take care, man. Happy Men's History Month to you.
You too. Have a good day.
All right, guys, that's it for the Hake Report. We will be back tomorrow on the Jesse Lee Peterson Show. Your emails and Facebook comments should be coming up in the second hour of the Jesse Lee Peterson Show. So be looking for that. Appreciate it. Follow Jesse on Facebook and Twitter. And you can email us. You can email me, thehakereport@gmail.com. And if I miss any super chats, guys, real fast, if I miss any super chats, you can screenshot them. And if we don't get to them, send it to me and be like, hey, you missed this one. And then we'll check it out and make sure it gets read. Because sometimes I miss D Live. All right, guys, take care.